The bullet, a silent traveler in the night, found its mark, not in the bustling city streets, but in the serene quiet of a villa overlooking the Mediterranean. A testament to the chilling efficiency of an operation that blurred the lines between sea and shadow. It was April 1988, and the coast of Tunisia lay bathed in the soft pre-dawn darkness. A gentle breeze, carrying the scent of salt and bougainvillea, whispered across the cliffs of Sidi Bou, said, perched on the edge, a villa, its whitewashed walls and blue shutters, a classic Mediterranean image, stood in stark contrast to the inky blackness of the sea. Inside, the target, Khalil al-Wazir, known to the world as Abu Jihad, sat at his desk. Papers, maps, and reports lay scattered around him, evidence of the life he led, the struggle he championed. He was the military commander of the Palestine Liberation Organization, second only to Yasser Arafat, a man who had dedicated his life to the cause of Palestinian liberation. He had no inkling that his world was about to shatter, that his final moments were drawing near. Unbeknownst to him, 300 meters away, beneath the surface of the moonless sea, a team of commandos, the elite of the Mossad's naval unit, Shatet 13, held their breath, their hearts a steady drum against their ribs. Hours they had waited, submerged in the cold, black water, their bodies aching, their muscles screaming for release. Their weapons, meticulously prepared, were poised and ready. They were the silent predators of the deep, masters of camouflage, their very existence a secret. The mission, to eliminate Abu Jihad, a task that demanded precision, stealth, and a complete mastery of the maritime environment. The turquoise waters that stretched before them were not merely a scenic vista. They were their path, their cover, their escape. Inside the villa, Abu Jihad leaned closer to a document, his face illuminated by the warm glow of a desk lamp. He was a man accustomed to danger, but even he could not fathom the silent assassins lurking just beyond the edge of his world. He was surrounded by security, by loyal men, but they were bound by land and routine, unaware of the threat that would materialize from the sea. Their vigilance, their training, their very lives, were built on assumptions and expectations, assumptions that the Mossad, in its relentless pursuit of its targets, was about to shatter. The air hung heavy with the anticipation of the coming dawn. The rhythmic lapping of the waves against the cliffs provided a counterpoint to the quiet tension of the moment, a steady pulse against the impending climax. It was a symphony of contrasts, the warmth of the villa against the icy chill of the sea, the vibrant life within against the looming shadow of death. The commandos, their forms, blending with the darkness, were nothing more than ghosts, their presence undetectable, their purpose inexorable. In precisely 4 minutes, the world would change for Abu Jihad. The sea, once a symbol of beauty and freedom, would become the assassin's final veil. The bullet, a whisper of death, had already found its mark, though the world still slumbered. In Sidi Bou said, a picturesque Tunisian town clinging to the cliffs overlooking the sapphire Mediterranean, a man named David, or perhaps it was Daniel, couldn't quite remember, adjusted his camera lens. He was a tourist, a seemingly innocuous observer in a land awash with the scent of jasmine and the clamor of Arabic conversations. His cover was a well-worn one, perfected over years spent in the shadows. The casual traveler, the inquisitive seeker of beauty, the one who blended in, unnoticed. His true purpose, however, was far from the postcard-perfect vistas. He was a Mossad operative, and his current mission was the meticulous study of the target. Khalil al-Wazir, better known as Abu Jihad, David, or Daniel, positioned himself across from the villa, the target's home, hidden behind the facade of a rented apartment, a perfect vantage point for his silent surveillance. He spent his days and nights observing, documenting, and weaving a tapestry of information that would ultimately pave the way for a deadly act. The villa, a stark white structure perched on the edge of the cliff, seemed to mock his efforts. The setting sun cast long shadows, obscuring details, and the salty breeze carried whispers of secrets he desperately needed to uncover. David felt the familiar thrum of tension, the anticipation that gnawed at his insides. He documented the comings and goings, the shifts in security, the routines that formed the rhythm of Abu Jihad's life. He recorded the changing light, the moments when the target emerged onto the balcony for his evening cigarette, the subtle movements of the guards, the cadence of life lived under threat. His camera, a sophisticated piece of equipment, became an extension of his own eyes, capturing every detail. He photographed the villa from every conceivable angle, memorizing the layout, the blind spots, the patterns that could be exploited. He noted the times the lights flickered in the study, the hour Abu Jihad retreated behind its walls. He felt the constant pressure of time. Each day he spent under cover increased the risk of exposure. The slightest mistake could compromise the entire operation. The potential for catastrophic failure, always at the forefront of his mind. David allowed himself to wander through the labyrinthine streets, a tourist lost in a sea of unknown language. He spoke in broken French, smiled and nodded at locals. He was the model of a harmless tourist in a foreign land. He knew the location of every phone booth, every cafe, every potential escape route. He'd even rented a small sailboat to get a better understanding of the area's currents and tides. These details might seem insignificant to an outsider, but to him, they were the threads that would weave the fabric of his escape. He observed the movements of the guards, their tired routines, the monotony that could be their undoing. He knew the limitations of their security, their blind spots, their moments of inattention. It was in these fleeting moments that his team would strike, like a whisper in the wind, a shadow in the moonlight. He felt a detached calmness, a necessary barrier that helped him accomplish his goals. He knew the potential for violence, for bloodshed, but this wasn't his concern. He had to think of the overall plan, the ultimate goal, and that meant meticulously planning every move, every detail. He knew that the only way to succeed was to become the ultimate ghost, disappearing into the backdrop of this beautiful coastal town, leaving nothing but a faint memory, a whisper on the wind. The world held its breath in the pre-dawn silence. The only sound, the rhythmic pulse of the Mediterranean against the hulls of the 3 Israeli missile ships, each a silent predator in the vast expanse. Minutes from the execution, the mission's climax was about to commence, where the meticulously crafted illusion of civilian traffic would become their cloak, their shield against scrutiny, their secret weapon. On board the ships, 40 Shaytet 13 commandos, along with Mossad operatives providing local intelligence and Sayeret Makal soldiers to handle the assassination itself, moved with a practiced grace, born of months of rigorous training. Their faces were etched with a grim focus, their eyes reflecting the cold, unwavering resolve required for the task ahead. The ships, named with innocuous codenames, were positioned miles off the Tunisian coast, their presence meticulously calculated to blend seamlessly with the regular maritime traffic. Their hulls, painted a deep, matte gray, were almost invisible against the inky blackness of the night. But it wasn't just paint that kept them hidden. The key was the mastery of electronic deception. Sophisticated radar jamming systems, a marvel of the era's technology, distorted the signals of the ships, mimicking the radar signatures of civilian freighters and tankers that frequented the waters. This was a critical element of the plan, a virtual invisibility cloak designed to confuse and mislead the coastal defenses of Tunisia, the very guardians of Abu Jihad's safety. Inside the bridge of the lead ship, the naval commander, a man hardened by years of service and countless covert missions, studied the radar screens. The blips representing their vessels were carefully masked, their identities swallowed by the multitude of civilian contacts. He tapped the screen, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. This was a ballet of deception, a dance of technological prowess. He could feel the weight of responsibility, the future of the operation balanced on the success of this illusion. Below decks, the commandos checked their equipment one last time. Waterproof bags held silenced weapons, each meticulously prepared, each a tool of precision and death. Their wetsuits, the same color as the night, were like a second skin, a layer of protection against the cold of the sea and the unseen dangers that lurked beneath the surface. Each man ran through his mental checklist, visualizing the mission. From the perilous climb up the cliff face to the single, deadly shot that would alter the course of history. As the ship sliced silently through the waves, the tension on board was palpable. The air crackled with anticipation, a charged stillness before the storm. The satellite navigation systems, still a nascent technology, were crucial. The ship's movement was reliant upon them, providing pinpoint accuracy in positioning, guiding them towards the predetermined launch point. The commander was acutely aware that the success of the mission depended not only on military skill but also on the subtle art of deception, the art of becoming shadows on the sea, phantoms in the night. The countdown had begun, a silent echo in the hearts of the commandos, a promise of action in the darkness. The scream of the shot, a sound that wouldn't reach human ears, sent a vibration through the night, a silent decree that shattered the illusion of peace, and yet remained as a secret whispered only amongst the cosmos. The sea, a boundless canvas of inky black, masked the unseen players in this deadly ballet. On the bridge of the Israeli missile ship, the commander, a man hardened by years of service and the chilling reality of his profession, watched his instruments with an unwavering gaze. He knew the world outside, with its bustling shipping lanes and watchful eyes, was a labyrinth of potential threats, a stage where any misstep could unravel the entire operation. His priority was the meticulous orchestration of a naval sleight of hand, a vanishing act of the most dangerous kind. The air thrummed with a nervous energy, a symphony of anticipation and strategic precision. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, each man and woman a cog in a machine calibrated for stealth and deadly accuracy. Their target was Tunisia, the coast, a dark smudge against the horizon, its defenses a constant worry. The plan relied on the element of surprise, the invisibility afforded by the vast expanse of the Mediterranean and their mastery of maritime deception. Their most potent weapon wasn't brute force, but the subtle art of disguise, of blending into the chaos, becoming one with the ordinary. The ship's electronic warfare systems crackled with activity, feeding false signals into the airwaves. creating a digital phantom, a mirage of commercial traffic. The ship subtly altered its course and speed, mimicking the movements of a humble freighter, weaving through the established shipping lanes like a chameleon, adapting to its environment. The radar screens glowed with a misleading symphony of blips and flashes, a vibrant tapestry of civilian and military vessels, each a potential threat, and each a carefully crafted illusion. The missile ship, now an intangible shadow, navigated the treacherous waters, a silent hunter concealed within the herd. The Tunisian coastal defenses, with their limited capabilities and the vast, open ocean, were rendered practically blind, their instruments unable to distinguish friend from foe. Below decks, in the nerve center of the operation, the intelligence officers monitored the radar feeds, their faces illuminated by the green glow of the screens. They analyzed the patterns of the enemy's radar sweeps, the frequency and duration of the pings, carefully calculating the optimal moments to execute their deception. Every detail mattered. Every nuance of their performance was critical to the mission's success. The ship's engineers worked tirelessly, adjusting the engines, tweaking the communications systems, ensuring that everything functioned with the utmost precision. Any failure could be catastrophic, a single misstep revealing their presence and jeopardizing the entire mission. Outside, the moonless night was a partner, a veil of darkness that allowed for the ship's quiet, almost unnoticeable movements. The officers worked tirelessly, their faces illuminated by the screens. The weight of the mission was upon them, the lives of their comrades, the reputation of their nation, all dependent on their ability to execute their operation flawlessly, to become the ultimate ghost ship. The only constant was the steady rhythm of the waves, the relentless lapping against the hull, a reminder of the vast, unforgiving ocean that held the key to both their victory and their potential defeat. They were the shadows of the sea, and their time was running out. The world narrowed to a pinpoint of light, a cold, hard squeeze, as the Zodiacs plunged into the darkness. Just moments ago, Abu Jihad had been alive, a man orchestrating the struggle from a sun-drenched study. Now, a single bullet had changed everything, rewriting the narrative of his life and death with the brutal finality of a whispered promise kept. The missile ships, their silhouettes blending seamlessly into the vast canvas of the Mediterranean night. Now began the most critical phase of the operation, the covert launch. The air hung heavy with the scent of salt and anticipation. The commandos, clad in their black neoprene suits, moved with a practiced grace, their movements fluid, efficient, almost balletic in their precision. Each man knew his role, etched into his muscle memory through months of rigorous training. The missile ships, like silent sentinels, had come as close as they dared to the Tunisian coast, their engines idling, a low thrum barely audible above the rhythmic crash of the waves against the hulls. The sea, a restless black mirror, reflected the scant starlight, swallowing any stray glimmers of light, a perfect accomplice to their clandestine mission. The Zodiacs, sleek and black as predatory fish, were lowered into the water. The commandos, their faces grim but resolute, clambered aboard, their weapons and equipment secured against the corrosive embrace of the sea. The engines, muffled to near silence, coughed to life, their low hum barely registering above the lapping of the waves. The air filled with the sharp, metallic temps of diesel and the faint, acrid smell of neoprene. The sea felt cold against their exposed skin, a stark reminder of the unforgiving element that they were about to entrust their lives to. The route was etched in the memory of the lead navigator, a man who had practically memorized every contour of the Tunisian coastline. He knew the currents, the reefs, the hidden hazards that lay beneath the surface. He steered the Zodiacs with the practiced ease of a seasoned sailor, relying not on lights, which could betray their presence, but on the precise bearings of his compass and the faint outlines of the land. Inside the Zodiacs, the world shrunk to the confines of the inflatable craft. The blackness became absolute, punctuated only by the subtle glow of the navigation instruments. The men were lost in thought. Each man wrestled with the implications of the operation. The weight of their mission pressed down on them, but they had a job to do. The sea, a deceptive mistress, offered no solace. Every ripple, every swell, was a potential threat capable of betraying their presence to the watchful eyes of the enemy. The air crackled with a low-voltage tension, a sense of impending danger, as the Zodiacs navigated the labyrinth of the coast. The commandos relied on their training, their discipline, their absolute trust in one another to keep them safe. They knew that their success depended on their ability to vanish as quickly and completely as they arrived, leaving behind no trace of their presence, no evidence of their dark passage across the moonless sea. The sea embraced them. It could also betray them. The commandos advanced into the embrace of the Mediterranean, the silent sentinels of a deadly game. The world tilted on its axis as the bullet found its mark, and the resulting echo, a soundless scream, was swallowed by the churning dark, a sound the Zodiacs wouldn't hear, but felt. The water was a slick, obsidian mirror reflecting the faint stars, a cold embrace against the neoprene suits as they glided onward. Every ripple, every splash, had to be suppressed. Years of training distilled into each deliberate movement, a ballet of stealth choreographed in the belly of the night. The air, thick with the scent of salt and the unseen promise of the Tunisian coast, was a veil, and they, the phantoms of the deep, were becoming one with it. The helmsman, his face illuminated only by the faint glow of the compass, wrestled with the Zodiac's responsive engine, keeping them on the precise course, etched into his memory alongside the detailed maps. He was acutely aware of the unseen dangers. The slightest deviation from the plotted route could bring them too close to the wrong ship, a coastal patrol, or, worst of all, a minefield, a silent killer beneath the waves. Beside him, the lead scout, his eyes peeled, peered into the black, scanning for landmarks. The rhythmic slap of the waves against the hull was a metronome, counting down the seconds, the distance, the mounting tension. Thoughts, as sharp and precise as the tools in their waterproof bags, flitted through their minds. They rehearsed the mission in their heads. The beach, the climb, the shot, the escape, the knowledge of what awaited them, the man whose life they were tasked with taking. The political machinations behind the operation were all secondary. The primary focus was the execution, the choreography, the absolute, cold professionalism. There was no room for error, no space for hesitation. Each man was a cog in a machine, turning in perfect synchronicity with the others. The water grew shallower, the darkness less absolute, a vague suggestion of sand beneath the hull. The lead scout raised a hand, a silent signal, and the engines were cut. The Zodiacs drifted, silent and unseen, towards the shore. The scout, now in the shallows, splashed softly, testing the ground, checking for anything that could betray their presence. He signaled to the others, a single, sharp gesture. The commandos slid over the sides, easing into the frigid shallows, their weapons held high to keep them dry. The beach, a dark, welcoming void, awaited. The final approach had begun. The last, most dangerous act in a meticulously planned tragedy. Each man's heart beat a drum against his ribs. The anticipation was a palpable thing, a weight pressing down on them. They moved like shadows, their movements fluid, coordinated. They felt the cold seeping into their bones, the wind whispering secrets in their ears. Their focus was absolute, their minds clear. The final approach to the villa. Soon, one man's world would end in a blink of an eye. The rest of them would return to sea, their purpose achieved, their actions erased, or so they hoped. The sea would hide them, and history would record a different story. The first wave of shock and disbelief that slammed through the study of Abu Jihad gave the commandos exactly the window they needed, an opening less than a minute long before the villa became a hornet's nest. Now, the ocean offered its salvation, a vast, dark canvas erasing the brushstrokes of their deadly art. The Zodiacs, their engines already humming a low thrum against the rhythm of the waves, were a ghostly presence, gliding towards the rendezvous point. They were a mere whisper, a fleeting shadow against the inky blackness. The air hung heavy with the scent of salt and the metallic temps of expended adrenaline. Each man, a tightly wound spring of controlled tension, moved with a practiced grace honed through years of clandestine training. Their black wetsuits, clinging to their bodies, were a seamless extension of the night. Their movements were those of silent phantoms. As they moved silently towards the extraction point, the shore, a jagged line against the horizon, was the final gate, the point of no return. The lead Zodiac, piloted by a veteran operator, cut through the water with unwavering precision. His gaze flicked from his compass to the faint glow of the stars, their silent navigation tools. He knew the coastline like the lines on his own hand. Each turn, each course correction was a matter of life and death, the culmination of months of detailed planning and tireless rehearsals. He focused, his senses heightened, the sea's voice speaking of potential hazards and possibilities. As the Zodiacs neared the rendezvous point, the divers, their mission successfully completed, surfaced from the depths. They clambered aboard, their faces grim, their movements efficient. Their task now to retrieve any remaining equipment and ensure the area was completely clean. Any trace of their presence, any stray piece of gear, would spell disaster. The beach was quickly swept, and then, a final check. The silence was broken only by the lapping of waves. The climb back into the Zodiacs was a coordinated ballet, a synchronized dance of men and equipment. Each movement deliberate, each a testament to teamwork. As they pulled away from the shore, the commandos scanned the coastline one last time, making sure that their mission remained a secret. There were no signs of disturbance, no trace of the brief, deadly choreography that had just played out on Tunisian soil. They were returning to the ocean's embrace. The missile ships, their silhouettes blending seamlessly with the horizon, were a beacon of safety, waiting with the patience of predators. They had held their breath for the last few, excruciating minutes, their crews in a state of high alert, ready to provide any necessary cover fire, though the risk of international repercussions loomed large. But now, as the Zodiacs approached, the tension began to ease, the ship ready to take on the commands, their work finally done. The operation was a victory of the sea, its dark waters providing the perfect conduit. The commandos had come in by water, killed their target, and now, they would vanish back into the very depths that had delivered them. They would become one with the waves, a phantom memory of a mission accomplished in silence. The sea, the ultimate concealer, was ready to swallow them whole, erasing any evidence of their deadly dance with the enemy. They would be gone, leaving behind only the echo of a single shot, a secret whispered on the windswept shores of Sidi, Mossad. The bullet, a silent traveler through the night, had found its mark, and the world held its breath as the echo of the shot dissolved into the vast emptiness of the sea. The plan, meticulously crafted, now demanded its execution, a flawless retreat, an invisible disappearance. The commandos moved with the precision of seasoned predators, their every motion rehearsed, their minds focused on the single objective: to vanish without a trace. Their ascent up the cliff face, the most vulnerable part of the operation, was behind them. Now, it was time to escape. Below, the Zodiacs waited, their powerful engines muffled, their silhouettes swallowed by the inky blackness of the water. The commandos, burdened by the adrenaline still coursing through their veins, descended with a speed that bordered on recklessness. Ropes were tossed, and bodies rappelled down the rugged face of the cliff, their forms merging and separating in the flickering shadows cast by their own headlamps. The air hung thick with the salty temps of the sea and the acrid scent of burnt gunpowder. Each second was a gamble, a race against the inevitable discovery, a contest against the rising tide of alarm that would soon sweep through the villa. The first commandos reached the beach, their boots sinking slightly into the soft sand. They moved quickly, their faces grim, their eyes scanning the terrain for any sign of pursuit. The Zodiacs, bobbing gently in the water, were their only salvation, their escape route, their promise of safety. One by one, they piled into the small boats, their movements coordinated, efficient, and silent. And the engines were quickly started. As the last commando clambered aboard, the Zodiacs turned and churned towards the open sea, the rhythmic thrum of their engines barely audible above the gentle lapping of the waves. The missile ships, patiently waiting in the deep, were their salvation. Back on the ships, the naval commander received confirmation of the mission's success. The encrypted message was brief and terse: objective achieved, extraction commencing. He allowed a small, almost imperceptible nod of satisfaction, the tension that had gripped him for hours, slowly beginning to ebb away. The order was given to prepare for the return, and the crew silently carried out their duties, their movements precise and practiced, like a well-oiled machine. As the Zodiacs approached the missile ships, the dark shapes of the vessels loomed larger, their forms solid and comforting in the vast darkness. The commandos transferred, their faces illuminated by the dim glow of the ship's lights. The Zodiacs, having served their purpose, were now gently pulled aboard, their mission complete. Then, the engines of the ships came alive, cutting through the silence of the night, and they began their long journey home, leaving no trace, no clue, of their presence. They became phantoms of the night, ready to disappear and fade away from the scene as the first rays of dawn painted the horizon, a memory, a testament to the shadows of the sea. They were leaving the scene of the crime, the scene of the execution, and the scene of their triumph, leaving Abu Jihad in his home. The world shrunk to the crosshairs, a perfect circle of light superimposed on the dimly lit study. The fate of a man and a mission hanging suspended in the humid Tunisian night. The sniper, his heart a metronome against the silence, inhaled slowly, each breath measured, a practiced ritual to steady the storm of adrenaline threatening to unhinge his focus. Below, the sea whispered against the cliff face, a lullaby of indifference to the deadly ballet about to unfold. The salt-laced air, thick with the scent of bougainvillea and distant diesel fumes, filled his lungs. He was a ghost, a whisper of a threat, rendered almost invisible by the darkness and the meticulous planning that had brought him to this precipice of action. His finger tightened on the trigger, the weight of the moment pressing down, a culmination of months of meticulous surveillance, training, and the silent, unspoken understanding of the cost of failure. He had practiced this shot countless times, the recoil a familiar dance, the trajectory etched into his muscle memory. Now, in the heart of the enemy's territory, he had to perform perfectly. Through the scope, Abu Jihad was a still life, a man oblivious to his impending doom, hunched over his desk, illuminated by the warm glow of a desk lamp. The sniper observed him for a final time, the slight curve of his back, the angle of his head, as if he could perceive his final thoughts. Time seemed to slow, the air crackling with anticipation. He imagined the bullet hurtling through the darkness, an invisible arrow unleashed. The wind was negligible, a stroke of operational fortune that simplified the calculations. The sniper was a professional, a detached observer, but the weight of the responsibility was substantial. He was the instrument of a decision made far from this Tunisian coast. This was the moment where training and preparation came to an apex. The confirmation, the nod, then, a sharp intake of breath, a final adjustment of the crosshairs, settling them on the target. He squeezed, a slow, deliberate pressure. The rifle coughed, a muted exhalation, a sound barely audible above the rhythmic rush of the sea. The bullet, a silver streak in the darkness, traveled 300 meters, a journey of destruction compressed into a heartbeat. It pierced the window, the glass exploding outwards, and found its mark with deadly precision. Abu Jihad's head snapped back, his body slumping, the figure still as the light behind him dimmed. It was over. The sniper lowered his rifle, the world abruptly snapping back into sharp focus. The mission was complete. The immediate aftermath was a blur of controlled action. He scanned the study one last time, ensuring there was no extraneous movement, no sign that would betray their presence. From below, he heard the faint voices, and the distant sounds of alarm, and he knew they had only seconds. A coded confirmation was transmitted, a concise message echoing across the night, back to the hidden command ship. A silent acknowledgement, the wind whipped, carrying the scent of gunpowder and the faint metallic temps of blood. The sniper turned, his senses already focused on the extraction. The descent was a swift, almost reckless ballet down the ropes, his hand burning with the friction. The commando below prepared to embark the team, ready to melt into the dark embrace of the sea, to leave no trace, save for the ghost of a single fatal shot. They had done their part, they had struck, and it was now time to disappear. The ocean awaited. The bullet, a whisper in the echoing silence of the Mediterranean night, had found its mark. Abu Jihad was dead. The silence in the villa was broken only by the rasp of a startled breath, the thud of a body hitting a desk. In the dark, the sniper, a figure of absolute precision in the scope of his rifle, lowered his weapon, the tension draining from his muscles. The mission, meticulously planned for months, hinged on the next few seconds. The man on the trigger, a seasoned veteran of countless silent operations, trusted the precision of his training and the unwavering focus of his team. His hand moved to the radio, his voice a low, clipped whisper into the coms. Target neutralized. Commencing extraction. Below, on the black lapping shore, the Zodiacs waited. Time was a serpent, coiling around their ankles. Their escape route, the very ocean that had brought them, was now their shield. The sniper's team, its task completed, retreated with the same chilling efficiency with which they had approached. They moved quickly, their movements as familiar and instinctual as breathing. Down the cliff face, the rough stone biting into their gloves. The climb down was faster than the climb up. Driven by the urgency of their task, the rope, their lifeline, was a mere conduit for their descent. Each footfall measured, their focus absolute. Back on the beach, the Zodiacs waited, their engines purring with suppressed power, ready to become phantoms. As the team reached the shore, they moved with a practiced grace, each man knowing his role. They melted into the waiting boats, the dark forms indistinguishable against the night. The engines roared to life, a low growl that was swallowed by the waves as the boats surged out into the darkness. The sea accepted them, a willing accomplice in their disappearing act. Behind them, the first lights flickered to life in the villa, a frantic dance of illumination signaling the beginning of chaos. Shouts, unintelligible across the water, pierced the darkness. The team knew, though, that their presence would soon be known. They had a brief, precious window before the alarms went off, before security services and police were alerted, before the Tunisians could properly respond. The Zodiacs raced away from the shore, the silhouettes of the houses shrinking behind them. They were heading to the waiting missile ships, the very same ships that had carried them across the Mediterranean, and the ships were preparing to fade into the abyss of the ocean. The boats were moving fast, eating up the distance in swift, powerful strides. The dark coastline receded, disappearing into the blackness. The ocean was closing ranks behind them, erasing any trace of their passage. Up ahead, the missile ships loomed out of the darkness, silent behemoths awaiting their return. As the Zodiacs closed in, the men felt a strange sense of relief. Their mission accomplished. Their work was done. As they moved back to the ships, they knew that their return would be as unseen as their arrival. The ships would disappear, too, dissolving back into the vastness of the ocean. Soon, nothing would remain except for the body in the villa and the ripples that were already fading. The men knew that their work was done, leaving nothing behind but the echoes of a single gunshot, the ghost of a shadow on a foreign shore, and the memory of a night when the sea became both a weapon and a grave. They would be gone. The explosion ripped through the pre-dawn silence, not a physical detonation, but a cataclysm of shattered perceptions. The world within Abu Jihad's study, minutes before cloaked in the deceptive tranquility of routine, fractured. Confusion reigned, a miasma that swirled around the body slumped over the desk, the crimson blossoming from a wound that would rewrite the narratives of 100 nations. The first responders, a team of Tunisian investigators, arrived with the sunrise, their sirens a mournful counterpoint to the chirping birds. A stark contrast to the serenity that had, until recently, defined Sidi, Boo said. Their meticulous combing of the villa began, a dance of flashlights cutting through the dust motes dancing in the morning light. They examined the scene with practiced eyes, cataloging the details, the meticulously arranged papers, the scattered books, the faint scent of Cuban cigars still clinging to the air. and the single, devastating entry wound just above the ear. The investigators, seasoned professionals, immediately began to construct a narrative based on the available evidence. A skilled assassin, using a silenced weapon, a precision shot that spoke of meticulous planning and cold-blooded execution. The door was secured, the windows intact, offering no apparent point of entry or egress for the killer. Security footage, reviewed exhaustively, revealed no anomalies, no unusual activity, no suspicious figures. Their search began with the obvious: the land routes, the air approaches, the known enemies. Outside, the investigators meticulously examined the grounds. They scrutinized every square inch of the pristine Mediterranean view, every inch of the rugged cliff face. They traced the trajectory of the bullet, estimating the distance, the angle, the probable location of the shooter. They interviewed the guards, the family, the domestic staff. Each account a piece of a puzzle that stubbornly refused to coalesce into a cohesive picture. The initial assumption, inevitably, was a local dispute, a political assassination orchestrated by a rival faction, a personal vendetta masked as a political statement. The Palestinian Liberation Organization PLO immediately became the focal point, their internal squabbles and ideological schisms offering fertile ground for speculation. The police focused their attention on landside roads and entrances, not imagining for a moment that the killer could have arrived, executed the deed, and vanished without a trace, by the sea. They were looking for a trail of tire tracks, a discarded weapon, or a witness. They'd never look beyond the land. The authorities, under pressure from the international community and the PLO, expanded their investigation, calling in experts, forensic specialists, ballistics analysts. They exhumed the victim, re-examined the autopsy reports, scrutinized every detail, leaving no stone unturned. Days turned into weeks, and the investigation dragged on. But with each passing day, the truth remained tantalizingly out of reach. The absence of a clear perpetrator, of a visible threat, fueled speculation, conspiracy theories, and accusations. A web of suspects was drawn with each passing hour. The Americans, the Soviets, rival factions within the PLO, and even disgruntled members of Abu Jihad's own inner circle. All were deemed possible and plausible. Yet the evidence remained silent, stubbornly refusing to reveal the true architects of the operation. The invisible intruders who had violated the villa's sanctity and shattered the fragile peace of Sidi Bou, said, vanishing like wraiths in the morning mist. The sea, though, remained oblivious. The waves, having ferried the executioners to their destination and then carried them away into the depths, continued to lap against the shore, erasing any lingering evidence, washing away the traces of the most audacious act of maritime assassination in modern history. The operation had been a success, leaving the authorities to grapple with the enigma of a phantom enemy, a foe that was everywhere and nowhere, a whisper in the wind that left only silence, a void they could never fill. The tourist, a man named David, had watched Abu Jihad die. He'd seen the flash of the muzzle, felt a slight tremor in the air as the silenced bullet found its mark, and then, a heartbeat later, observed the way the man crumpled into his papers. A life extinguished with the precision that chilled him to the bone. Even now, months later, he was back in his apartment in Tel Aviv, staring out at the Mediterranean, the ghost of Sidi Bou, said clinging to him like the salt spray that had kissed his face that night. His disguise, the meticulously crafted persona of a harmless travel writer, had served its purpose flawlessly, a veil of innocence drawn over the cold efficiency of the mission. He'd arrived in Sidi Bou said weeks before the operation, a chameleon blending seamlessly into the vibrant chaos of the Tunisian coastal town. He'd strolled through the narrow, cobbled streets, his camera clicking, his notebook filled with observations, a symphony of sensory details. The scent of jasmine and grilled fish, the clamor of the marketplace, the gentle lapping of the waves against the shore, all were meticulously catalogued. But his true focus was always on the villa, on Abu Jihad, on the intricate dance of security that surrounded the man. He'd posed as a curious tourist, occasionally striking up brief, polite conversations with locals. His accent flawlessly neutral, his questions innocent. He'd learned the rhythms of the villa, the comings and goings of its residents, the patterns of the guards, the blind spots in the security. He had, in essence, become Abu Jihad's shadow, a silent observer charting the course of the man's demise. His camera, that innocuous tool of his trade, had been his most potent weapon. The photographs he'd taken were far more than simple snapshots. They were a roadmap to the target. He'd captured the angles, the distances, the vulnerabilities. He'd documented the placement of the guards, the height of the walls, the precise location of the study window, the very spot where the fatal shot would be fired. The photographs had become the foundation of the mission, the blueprint for a deadly masterpiece of precision. He had become the eyes and ears of the operation, the vital link in the chain, observing every detail, every nuance, creating the path to the man's death. Now, sitting in the solitude of his apartment, the taste of the sea lingered on his tongue as he remembered the meticulous preparations, the careful calibrations. He thought of the wind direction that night, the whisper of the breeze, the pressure of the trigger. It was a perfect shot, a feat of marksmanship delivered with a cold efficiency that left no room for sentiment. The ocean had swallowed the evidence of the attack. David was an artist of camouflage. He had disappeared the instant he had left the scene, returning to his cover story and blending back into the normal flow of the town. The tourist's legacy was one of silent observation, of blending in, of becoming invisible. The man who had walked the streets of Sidi Bou said, as a carefree traveler, had orchestrated the assassination from start to finish. The ultimate example of the Mossad's mastery of covert warfare, where the most dangerous weapon was the appearance of innocence. His mission was complete, a bloody transaction, leaving only silence in its wake. The bullet, a whisper of death, found its mark, and in that instant, Abu Jihad's world dissolved, not in a blaze of glory, but in the quiet finality of a perfectly aimed shot. He sat at his desk, the papers and maps of a life dedicated to resistance scattered around him, oblivious to the predator that had stalked him across the sea. The lights of Sidi Bou said, a tapestry of warm glows clinging to the Tunisian cliffs, blurred and faded as the assassin's singular act plunged him into an eternal darkness. The study, a space he knew so well, had become a tomb. The air, moments before, filled with the scent of his pipe tobacco and the low hum of his own thoughts, now hung heavy, thick with the metallic temps of blood and the suffocating silence of death. The window, a portal to the endless blue of the Mediterranean, was shattered, a spiderweb of cracks obscuring the view of the moonless night. Outside, the unseen assassins, like phantoms of the deep, began their withdrawal, their escape route meticulously planned and waiting. Abu Jihad felt nothing. His mind, once a battlefield of strategic considerations, of the hopes and fears of a struggling people, was empty. The weight of his own mortality had been lifted, leaving only the cold reality of his demise. He was a symbol now, a martyr, a footnote in the history books of a conflict that would likely outlive even the memory of his death. The work he had toiled over, the meticulous plans for the future of Palestine, the complex web of alliances and betrayals, were all rendered insignificant. His wife, in the next room, heard a muffled thump and assumed a dropped book or a misplaced object. His bodyguards, stationed just outside, registered only the faint echo of a sound, a disturbance they initially dismissed as a minor incident. They would soon realize the gravity of the situation, but by then, the assassins would be gone, swallowed by the darkness of the sea. The sea, the assassin's ally, the escape route, the hiding place. It had witnessed countless dramas, absorbed the secrets of empires and invaders, and it would now silently accept this final act, this calculated intrusion. The commandos had chosen this route not for glory, but for its anonymity, the ability to strike and vanish without a trace. They came not as conquerors, but as whispers in the night, as phantoms born of the ocean's depths. And just like the ocean itself, they would leave no mark, no evidence, no proof. The tourist, the unassuming observer of Abu Jihad's habits, the man who blended so seamlessly with the backdrop of Sidi Bou said, was the face of this operation. The ships, the shadows in the sea, the precise calculations of the trajectory, the wind, all orchestrated by the cold logic of professionals. They had chosen to strike from a place where the sun sets, from the embrace of the Mediterranean. Abu Jihad, in his last view, did not see them coming. He did not see the ships disguised as simple cargo carriers, or the tourist disguised as a man. Only the promise of an ordinary day, an ordinary evening, until the bullet found its home. He was a victim of an enemy that was concealed by the very landscape he loved, by the tranquil waters of the Mediterranean Sea. The shot, a whisper in the night, a single, perfectly aimed bullet, echoed not just through the study of Abu Jihad's villa, but across the vast expanse of the Mediterranean and into the annals of covert warfare. The success of Operation Spring of Youth, however, was not measured solely in a life extinguished, but in the meticulously orchestrated vanishing act that followed, a testament to the Mossad's mastery of the unseen. The ensuing silence in Sidi Bou said was not merely the absence of sound, but the void created by a meticulously planned deception. The villa, now a silent tomb, held no immediate clues to the manner of Abu Jihad's death. The investigation, predictably, would focus on avenues that led away from the sea. They would scrutinize land routes, analyze air traffic, and interrogate those who knew Abu Jihad, searching for a trace of the assassin. Utterly blind to the watery trail of the true perpetrators, the commandos, meanwhile, were already miles away, their zodiacs swallowed by the inky blackness, their return to the missile ships a ballet of silence and precision. The beauty of the operation lay in its audacity and simplicity. The sea, often a barrier, had become a highway, a cloak of invisibility. The Mossad had exploited the very nature of the Mediterranean, its vastness, its depth, its indifference to the affairs of man. The Israeli missile ships, cloaked in the radar signatures of civilian vessels, were already heading back to port. their presence in Tunisian waters explained away as a routine patrol. Another invisible cog in the machine of international shipping. The tourist, a ghost in the bustling streets of Sidi Mossad, would fade back into anonymity, his role played to perfection. The rifle, the silent killer, was gone, along with any tangible evidence. The true legacy of Operation Spring of Youth was not just the elimination of a man, but the demonstration of a new form of warfare. The Israelis had perfected the art of striking from a distance, of hitting hard and disappearing without a trace. They had exposed the vulnerabilities of a sovereign nation, not through brute force, but through cunning, precision, and the calculated manipulation of perception. The tourist, the ships, the sea, these were merely instruments in a complex orchestra of deception, a testament to the power of intelligence, planning, and the unwavering execution of a meticulously crafted plan. The assassination, in the immediate aftermath, was a study in ambiguity. The international community, predictably, condemned the act, while Israel maintained its policy of deliberate silence. The political fallout would be a complex dance of accusations and denials, but the true impact would be felt in the shadows. The Mossad had sent a clear message: no one was safe. The ripple effects would be felt for years to come. The assassination became a template for future operations, a case study in naval camouflage and covert action. It would inspire a new generation of operatives, and it would change the way conflicts were fought in the 21st century. The Mediterranean, forever marked by the events of that April night, would continue to bear witness to the ebb and flow of human conflict, a silent testament to the enduring power of the unseen.